They were the faces that defined an era, gracing movie posters, magazine covers, and the fantasies of millions. But behind the luminous glow of Golden Age Hollywood lies a truth so dark it still shocks us today. The most beautiful stars of the silver screen weren't born that way. They were built, reconstructed, rebranded, and sometimes destroyed in the process. Hollywood's obsession with perfection turned ordinary people, often mocked, rejected, or even called ugly, into gods and goddesses of cinema. Yet every sculpted cheekbone, every glossy curl, every dazzling smile came at a devastating cost. Tonight, we're peeling back the layers of old Hollywood's glamour to reveal the brutal transformations behind it. From Rita Hayworth's erased identity to Judy Garland's drug-fueled makeover, these are the stories of stars who were literally remade, sometimes painfully, sometimes tragically, to fit the narrow image of beauty that America demanded. This is 15 ugliest Golden Age stars who were made beautiful, and by the end you'll never look at Hollywood's icons the same way again. Number 1. Rita Hayworth, the goddess who erased herself. They called her too dark, too ethnic, too wrong, but Hollywood had a way of turning rejection into radiance if you were willing to let them destroy who you really were. Before she became the ultimate love goddess, she was Margarita Carmen Cancino, a young Spanish-American dancer, trying to make a living in a town that didn't want her face. Executives said her black hair, olive skin, and low hairline made her look foreign, unfit for the blonde ideal of 1930s America. So they decided to rebuild her, piece by painful piece. For 2 excruciating years, Rita underwent electrolysis treatments to raise her hairline, tiny electric shocks burning away thousands of follicles without anesthesia. Her natural black hair was bleached and dyed an artificial auburn red, her skin was lightened with thick layers of makeup, and her name, the last trace of her heritage, was stripped away. Margarita Cancino became Rita Hayworth. The transformation was total. By the mid-1940s, she was the face of glamour, the fantasy of an entire nation. Her Life magazine pinup was so iconic, it was painted on the atomic bomb tested at Bikini Atoll. The girl once deemed too Mediterranean had become America's ultimate bombshell. But beauty came with a curse. Behind the perfect smile was a woman who mourned the self she lost. Rita would later confess, "Men go to bed with Gilda, but wake up with me." The world fell in love with her mask, not the woman beneath it. Hollywood had transformed her into its most luminous star, but only by erasing the light that had been hers to begin with. Number 2. Rock Hudson, rebuilding the perfect man. They called him stiff, awkward, and hopeless in front of a camera, but Hollywood saw a body they could build, a voice they could deepen, and a man they could manufacture. Before he was Rock Hudson, he was Roy Scherer Jr., a shy truck driver from Illinois who stumbled into an acting test at Universal in 1947. It was a disaster. He needed 38 takes just to say his own name correctly. Executives mocked him, crooked teeth, high voice, clumsy posture. But one man, talent scout Henry Wilson, saw something the others didn't, a frame tall enough to command a screen and a face that could be fixed. "Sign him," Wilson said. "We'll teach him to act later." What followed wasn't training, it was reconstruction. Hudson was sent to dentists for perfect teeth, to speech coaches to drop his pitch, and to physical trainers to sculpt his 6'5" frame into marble. He learned how to stand, how to walk, how to smile. Even his name was rebuilt, Rock Hudson, the perfect blend of strength and American wholesomeness. By the 1950s, he was the embodiment of masculinity. Broad shoulders, confident smile, the man every woman wanted and every man wanted to be. The studio's creation worked flawlessly, but there was one part of him the machine could never allow: his truth. Rock Hudson was gay, a secret he had to hide behind fake relationships and a studio-arranged marriage. The man who symbolized America's ideal manhood lived in constant fear that the image would crack. He was strong, handsome, invincible on screen, but imprisoned off it. Hollywood made him its perfect man, but perfection came at the cost of his freedom, forcing him to live a life scripted by others. Number 3. Marilyn Monroe, the girl who never existed. They called her the perfect woman. But Marilyn Monroe wasn't born, she was assembled. Every curl, every whisper, every sway of her hips was part of a carefully constructed illusion. Before the platinum blonde bombshell, there was Norma Jean Mortensen, a shy brown-haired girl from a broken home who worked at a munitions factory during World War II. When she signed with 20th Century Fox in 1946, studio executives saw potential, but no glamour. Her teeth were crooked, her nose too rounded, her jaw too soft. They told her she could be a star, but first she'd need to disappear. The transformation began with her hair, bleached again and again until it reached a shade of blonde that didn't exist in nature. Each session burned her scalp, and by her 30s, the damage was so severe she had to wear wigs. Her nose and chin were subtly reshaped, her teeth straightened, her skin lightened, her voice was re-engineered, coached into that breathy, fragile tone the world would come to worship. Even her walk was invented. She sliced one heel shorter than the other to create that hypnotic, swaying motion that would become her signature. Norma Jean became Marilyn Monroe, the most desired woman on earth, but the woman inside struggled to survive her creation. Friends recalled how she could turn Marilyn on and off like a light switch. In one moment she was quiet, thoughtful Norma. In the next she was the fantasy, lips parted, eyes half closed, every movement calculated to seduce a camera. But when the lights went off, the illusion vanished and the loneliness crept in. The world fell in love with Marilyn Monroe. But Norma Jean was left behind, forgotten by the very dream she had become. Number 4. Judy Garland, drugged into a doll. They told her she was too plain, too round, too awkward to ever be beautiful. But Hollywood didn't take no for an answer. They simply redesigned her. Before the world knew her as Judy Garland, she was a 13-year-old named Frances Gumm, a small-town performer with an extraordinary voice and an ordinary face. When she signed with MGM in 1935, studio head Louis B. Mayer looked at her and said, "She's my little hunchback." He called her the ugly duckling, and the transformation began. Executives ordered her to lose weight. When diets failed, they gave her amphetamines to suppress her appetite and barbiturates to help her sleep. It was the start of a dependence that would last her entire life. Makeup artists reshaped her features with paint and powder. They capped her teeth, bound her chest, and used painful corsets to squeeze her into the girl-next-door image they wanted. Even her nose was altered with metal discs slipped beneath the skin to make it appear smaller on camera, a medieval form of beauty torture. By 16, she was the innocent face of the Wizard of Oz, smiling under the hot studio lights as the world fell in love with Dorothy. But behind that perfect smile was a teenager shaking from exhaustion, living on pills, fear, and the approval of men who called her property. Hollywood made her radiant, then destroyed her in the same breath. She became the embodiment of sweet American innocence, all while slowly losing her own. Judy Garland was the studio system's masterpiece and its victim. A child turned into a doll, then discarded when the seams began to show. Number 5. Lucille Ball. From too plain to queen of comedy. They said she'd never make it, that she was too plain, too freckled, too ordinary for the silver screen. But Lucille Ball didn't just prove them wrong. She turned her so-called flaws into her greatest weapon. When she first arrived in Hollywood in the 1930s, Lucille was dismissed by nearly every casting director. Her brown hair, pale freckles, and angular jawline didn't fit the era's fragile beauty ideal. She spent years stuck in minor roles, the background showgirl, the wisecracking friend, the woman behind the real star. Then came a bold decision that would change everything. For the 1942 film Du Barry Was a Lady, she dyed her hair a fiery red-orange, a color so vivid it leapt off the screen. It wasn't natural, but it was unforgettable. That shocking hue became her signature. Hollywood makeup artists worked to soften her features and highlight her eyes, but Lucille went further. She learned to use her face like clay, stretching, twisting, exaggerating every expression until laughter became her magic. She turned her awkward looks into physical comedy gold. The freckles they once told her to hide became part of her charm. When I Love Lucy premiered in 1951, she was no longer just another actress, she was an empire. America adored her not because she looked perfect, but because she was real. She made beauty funny, flaws powerful, and imperfection lovable. Lucille Ball didn't let Hollywood redefine her. She redefined Hollywood, proving that true stardom isn't about symmetry or polish, but about presence, timing, and fearless authenticity. The woman once told she wasn't pretty enough for film became the most beloved face in television history, and she did it by laughing in beauty's face. Number 6. Marlene Dietrich, beauty sculpted by shadows. They said she was nothing special, round face, soft features, too ordinary for a leading lady. But Hollywood didn't change her face, it changed the light around it. When Marlene Dietrich arrived from Germany in the early 1930s, studio executives saw a polite, talented actress but not a star. Her beauty didn't leap off the screen, until she met a man who would literally reinvent her image, director Josef von Sternberg. Von Sternberg didn't just film Marlene, he sculpted her. He experimented with light and shadow until her face became otherworldly. Overhead lighting carved sharp cheekbones where none had seemed to exist. Soft focus turned her skin to porcelain. And one perfectly placed beam of light created that famous sparkle in her eyes, the hypnotic Dietrich look. Together, they invented a new kind of cinematic beauty, mysterious, unattainable, born from illusion. Offset, Marlene studied her own face relentlessly. She memorized every angle, every shadow, and refused to be filmed from her bad side. She even went as far as removing her molars to hollow her cheeks, a painful sacrifice in the name of beauty. Her transformation wasn't just physical, it was psychological. Dietrich crafted an entire persona, seductive yet androgynous, feminine yet defiant. She wore men's suits with a confidence that shocked 1930s audiences, blending strength and sensuality into something entirely new. The woman once dismissed as ordinary became cinema's ultimate enigma, not because of what nature gave her, but because of what artistry could create. Marlene Dietrich proved that beauty wasn't always born. Sometimes it was lit into existence. Number 7. Joan Crawford. Perfection through pain. They said her mouth was too wide, her face too round, her smile too strange for beauty. But Joan Crawford didn't become a star by being born perfect. She built herself into one. Before she was the screen queen of MGM, she was Lucille, a young woman from Texas with big dreams and bigger insecurities. When she arrived in Hollywood in the 1920s, studio executives saw potential, but also problems. They mocked her wide mouth, her gums, her heavy jawline. Publicist Pete Smith even joked that her name LeSueur sounded like sewer, so the studio renamed her Joan Crawford, a cleaner name for a face they planned to reconstruct. Her teeth were capped, her eyebrows plucked into razor-thin arches, and her hairline painfully raised through electrolysis. Makeup artists contoured her cheeks with rouge and shadow until they looked carved from marble. Every morning she plunged her face into ice water to tighten her skin and practiced vowel sounds in the mirror to strengthen her facial muscles. Crawford's face became a weapon, sharp, fierce, unforgettable. But the transformation didn't end there. Joan reinvented herself again and again, from flapper girl to 1940s powerhouse, from ingenue to commanding matriarch. Each decade brought a new version, a new mask. She refused to age quietly, fighting time as fiercely as she had fought the word ugly. Her obsession with control became legend, spotless homes, perfect makeup, rehearsed smiles, because she knew the truth. In Hollywood, beauty wasn't something you owned. It was something you maintained every day against the odds. Joan Crawford turned pain into polish, insecurity into armor. The woman once mocked for her smile became the face of relentless perfection, and the price was never letting it slip. Number 8. Shelley Winters. Reinventing herself over and over. They laughed at her. Too chubby, too loud, too ordinary. Hollywood told Shelley Winters she could never be beautiful, so she decided to prove them wrong. When she arrived in the 1940s, the studios typecast her immediately, the comic relief, the best friend, the funny fat girl who never got the guy. She was talented, yes, but not glamorous, and in old Hollywood, that meant invisible. Then, one day, Shelley looked in the mirror and made a decision. If the studio wouldn't create her star image, she would. She went on a crash diet, losing more than 30 pounds in a matter of weeks. Her naturally dark hair was stripped and bleached platinum blonde until it shimmered like Marilyn's. She learned how to move, how to pose, how to make her body appear lighter, smaller, more feminine. Even her voice changed, softer, breathier, molded to fit the studio's fantasy of desirability. The transformation was instant. Hollywood saw a new woman, sultry, confident, marketable. By 1947, Shelley Winters was no longer the punchline, she was the leading lady. Her bombshell reinvention earned her roles alongside William Holden and Burt Lancaster. But Shelley wasn't fooled. She'd played their game and won. Now she wanted to play her own. For a place in the sun, she deliberately gained weight again, rejecting glamour to embody realism. The result? An Academy Award nomination. Years later, she won 2 Oscars, both for roles where she looked ordinary. Shelley Winters broke Hollywood's cruel rulebook. She used beauty to open the door, then kicked it down. The ugly duckling became a swan, and then chose to be herself instead. Number 9. Fred Astaire, too ugly to dance with beauty. They said he was too thin, too awkward, too strange-looking to ever be a romantic lead. But Fred Astaire didn't need a perfect face. He made the world fall in love with the way he moved. When Astaire first tested for RKO Pictures in 1933, the studio's infamous report read, "Can't act, slightly bald, can dance a little." One executive even called him rodent-faced, and wondered aloud who would ever pay to watch him dance with beautiful women. Astaire had talent, but Hollywood wanted symmetry, muscles, glamour, everything he wasn't. So instead of changing himself, he changed the standard. Costume designers built sleek, tailored suits that broadened his shoulders and hid his lanky frame. Lighting experts learned how to soften his jawline and minimize his ears. Cameramen studied his angles until they found what the mirror never could, effortless grace, and then came flying down to Rio. Fred Astaire glided across the floor with such charm, such magnetic rhythm, that audiences forgot what he looked like. He didn't need to be handsome. He was elegant. He didn't need to be muscular. He was fluid. His top hat and tails became symbols of sophistication, turning movement into style and style into beauty. By the 1940s, the man once labeled too ugly was redefining masculinity itself. He wasn't a hero carved from marble. He was one made from music. Astaire proved that beauty could be born of motion, confidence, and grace, not perfection. The studios tried to sculpt him into something he wasn't. Instead, he taught them that true charm can't be manufactured. Fred Astaire didn't fit Hollywood's image. He made Hollywood dance to his. Number 10. Veronica Lake, the accident that made a legend. They called her the mystery woman, half hidden, half revealed, a face that launched 1,000 imitations. But the look that made Veronica Lake a legend wasn't planned. It was an accident. When she first arrived in Hollywood as Constance Aukelman, she was just another pretty blonde in a sea of starlets. Studios liked her, but no one remembered her. She was forgettable, until one fateful moment on set changed everything. During the filming of I Wanted Wings in 1941, a loose strand of her hair slipped across her right eye. The camera kept rolling, and what should have been a mistake became magic. The shadowed face, the mysterious glance, it was hypnotic. Director Mitchell Leisen knew it instantly. This was her image. The studio seized on it like lightning in a bottle. They dyed her hair a brighter gold, exaggerated the fall over her eye, and built her entire persona around that peekaboo look. It became a national obsession. Women across America copied it, magazines praised it, and Veronica Lake became one of the most famous faces in film noir history. But fame built on an accident has a price. The hairstyle that made her famous soon became a prison. During World War II, factory workers imitating her look kept getting their hair caught in machines, and the US government actually asked her to change it. When she did, her popularity plummeted overnight. By the 1950s, the mysterious blonde who once ruled Hollywood was forgotten, working as a bartender in New York, serving drinks to people who didn't recognize her. Veronica once said, "I wasn't hiding, I was drying out." Her fame began with a mistake and ended when she tried to correct it. The woman who was accidentally made beautiful was never allowed to simply be human, turning flaws into fire. They said she was strange-looking, bulging eyes, small mouth, sharp cheekbones. One executive even compared her to a dead fish. But Bette Davis didn't hide her flaws, she weaponized them. When she first arrived in Hollywood in 1930, studios didn't know what to do with her. She wasn't soft or sweet, and she didn't fit the mold of the delicate blonde beauty they wanted. Universal nearly dropped her after her first few pictures, convinced she'd never become a leading lady. But Bette refused to fade into the background. She found power in her difference. Instead of concealing her large, expressive eyes, she used them to command the camera, to glare, to seduce, to destroy. In 1934's Of Human Bondage, she played a cruel, manipulative woman with such ferocity that audiences were shocked. They'd never seen a female performance so raw, so unglamorous, so real. And that's when everything changed. Bette became Hollywood's first actress to make imperfection magnetic. She chose roles that other stars feared: desperate women, broken women, powerful women. She painted herself grotesque when the part demanded it, famously applying her own clownish makeup in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. When asked why, she said, "Until you're known in my profession as a monster, you're not a star." Her defiance reshaped what beauty could mean on screen. It wasn't softness or symmetry, it was presence, truth, and intensity. Bette Davis didn't chase Hollywood's idea of beauty, she burned it down and built her own. The woman once mocked for her two big eyes turned them into her signature, eyes that could freeze a man, melt a heart, or shatter an illusion in a single look. Number 12. Anna May Wong. The beauty Hollywood wouldn't allow. They said she was too Chinese to play a leading lady and too American to play a Chinese one. In the end, Anna May Wong was trapped between two worlds that refused to claim her. Born in Los Angeles in 1905 to Chinese-American parents, Anna was the first Asian-American movie star. She was talented, graceful, and magnetic on screen. But in the Hollywood of the 1920s and 30s, her face was both her passport and her prison. Studio executives exoticized her beauty but wouldn't let her play romantic leads. The infamous anti-miscegenation codes of the era banned her from even kissing a white actor on screen, so when she was cast, it was almost always as the villain, the seductress, or the tragic other. In 1937, for The Good Earth, a film about Chinese peasants, Anna auditioned for the lead role. It should have been hers. She was Chinese-American, fluent in English, and already a star. But MGM executives gave the role to a white actress, Louise Rayner, who played the part in Yellowface and won an Oscar. They offered Anna the role of the villain instead. She refused. "You're asking me," she said, "to play the only unsympathetic Chinese character in the picture." The industry tried to westernize her. Lighter makeup, altered eye shapes, and wardrobes that blurred cultures into fantasy. She was told to act mysterious, to smile less, to fit a stereotype that wasn't her own. Anna May Wong became a global symbol, admired abroad, ignored at home. She was the beauty Hollywood created, but never accepted. Her story isn't one of transformation, it's one of erasure. A woman made unforgettable by an industry that tried to make her invisible. Number 13. Humphrey Bogart. From rodent-like to romantic lead. They said he was too small, too wiry, too ugly to be a hero. One casting director went so far as to call him rodent-like, but Humphrey Bogart would turn those words into legend by proving that charisma could outshine beauty. When Bogart started in Hollywood in the early 1930s, he was a second-rate gangster, the guy who got shot halfway through the movie. Studios kept him in the shadows, convinced his narrow frame, crooked teeth, and lisp made him unfit for leading man roles. He was never invited to smile for the posters. He was the backup, the filler, the man meant to die before the ending. But the world was changing. As the 1940s arrived and the world went to war, audiences didn't want perfection anymore. They wanted truth. And suddenly, Bogart's flaws looked a lot like authenticity. In High Sierra and the Maltese Falcon, directors stopped trying to make him handsome. They filmed him in profile, in shadow, emphasizing his grit instead of hiding it. The crooked teeth became a smirk, the narrow face became a trademark, and that slight lisp, once mocked, made every line sound deliberate, confident, unforgettable. By the time Casablanca premiered in 1942, the ugly gangster had become the ultimate romantic hero. He wasn't perfect, he was real. When he said, "Here's looking at you, kid," the world believed him. Bogart's rise redefined masculinity itself. He made imperfection desirable, toughness romantic, and vulnerability powerful. The studios tried to mold him, but he became iconic by refusing to change. The man once called too rough for the spotlight became the standard of cool for generations. Humphrey Bogart didn't transform into Hollywood's idea of beauty, he made Hollywood fall in love with his own. Number 14. Greta Garbo. Too ethnic, too heavy, too different. They said she was too thick, too foreign, too masculine. But Hollywood's so-called Swedish problem would become its greatest miracle. Greta Garbo, the woman who turned silence into seduction. When Garbo arrived in Hollywood from Sweden in 1925, MGM executives were unsure. Louis B. Mayer reportedly called her a big horse. Her nose was too strong, her face too wide, her body too athletic for the fragile American ideal. They debated whether to send her back to Europe, until the camera started rolling. Under the soft glow of studio lights, something happened. Cinematographer William Daniels discovered that Garbo's heavy features didn't need to be hidden, they needed to be worshipped. He used gauzy filters and luminous close-ups to make her skin glow like marble. Each frame transformed her from awkward immigrant to ethereal goddess. Her gaze, slow, distant, unreadable, became her weapon. The studio still made its adjustments. Her thick eyebrows were plucked into thin arches. Her body was slimmed through strict diets. Her name shortened from Greta Gustafsson to Greta Garbo. But unlike other stars, Garbo demanded control. She refused false glamour, rarely wore elaborate costumes, and hated interviews. She let mystery be her makeup. When Flesh and the Devil and Anna Karina hit the screen, audiences didn't just see beauty, they felt reverence. Garbo wasn't human, she was myth. Critics called her the divine. And for once, Hollywood didn't erase uniqueness, it elevated it. Garbo's power came not from perfection, but from presence. The very features they mocked became her signature. The woman once deemed too strange for the screen became the face that defined cinema's golden light. She didn't conform to beauty, she became its definition. Number 15. Montgomery Clift, redefining male beauty as vulnerability. They said he was too soft, too sensitive, too strange-looking to ever be a leading man. But Montgomery Clift didn't just become a star. He redefined what beauty meant for men in Hollywood. When he arrived from Broadway in the late 1940s, studio executives didn't know where to place him. He wasn't rugged like John Wayne or polished like Clark Gable. He was quiet, introspective, with an angular face that the camera didn't immediately love. One producer dismissed him as too pretty to be tough, too peculiar to be handsome. But Clift wasn't interested in playing the studio's game. He refused to change his nose, his teeth, his hairline, anything. He told directors, "If I can't be myself, I'm not interested." And somehow that raw honesty became magnetic. In The Heiress and A Place in the Sun, he didn't perform masculinity, he felt it. He brought vulnerability, empathy, and quiet torment to the screen, giving male audiences permission to feel and female audiences a new kind of desire. The old archetype of the stoic hero began to crumble. Hollywood didn't know it yet, but Clift was building the blueprint for modern acting itself. Then in 1956, tragedy struck. A car crash shattered his jaw and paralyzed part of his face. The studios urged him to quit, but Clift kept working. His post-accident performances were raw, haunted, and deeply human. The beauty they once overlooked had evolved into something more profound, truth. Montgomery Clift never fit the mold. He melted it. He showed that beauty wasn't about dominance, but depth. The man once called too odd for the screen became the soul of a generation. He didn't just act, he felt. And in doing so, he changed the face of Hollywood forever. They called them beautiful. But beauty in old Hollywood was never a gift, it was a cost. Behind the glowing close-ups and golden smiles were people who'd been carved, painted, and reprogrammed into perfection. Rita Hayworth erased her heritage. Judy Garland was drugged into innocence. Rock Hudson lived a lie to preserve an image that was never his. Even the strongest, like Bette Davis and Joan Crawford, spent their lives wrestling the mirror, terrified of what would stare back if the illusion cracked. The Golden Age sold dreams, but it built them out of pain. The camera could make you eternal, but it could also erase you completely. For every star who sparkled on screen, there was a human being hidden beneath, scared, scarred, and often broken by the weight of their own perfection. Yet somehow, from all that manipulation and suffering, something transcendent emerged. Garbo's divine stillness, Bogart's weary honesty, Lucille Ball's fearless humor. These were not accidents, they were rebellions, moments where the truth broke through the studio's fantasy, and the world saw not an image but a soul. That's the paradox of Hollywood's golden age. Its cruelty created beauty, but that beauty revealed humanity, and maybe that's why these faces still haunt us. Because when we look at them, we're not just seeing stars, we're seeing the price of wanting to be loved by the whole world. So the next time you watch an old Hollywood film, when you see Rita's perfect smile or Judy's trembling eyes, remember, behind every legend was a person who paid dearly to become one. Which of these transformations shocked you the most? Was it Marilyn Monroe's total reinvention, or Rock Hudson's secret double life? Let us know in the comments below. And if you'd like to keep exploring the hidden truths behind cinema's most glamorous era, hit that like button, subscribe, and join us next time, as we uncover the real stories Hollywood tried to hide.